Thank you very, very much, honorable leaders and members of the Plaid Cymru and the Senate, my friends, ladies and gentlemen. Yoch in Fawri Bor Cymru. I'll say it again. Yoch in Fawri Bor Cymru. Ama randod trendech we di danos I Popo Palestina. And for those who don't speak Welsh, I want to say a huge thank you to the people of Wales for the historic, incredible solidarity with the people of Palestine. You have shown for us that you always stand on the right side of history. And on behalf of the Palestinian people, I'm here to first tell you, thank you. We've seen you, we've followed you, every act you did, every voice you raised, every motion you drafted, every ceasefire you called for has been followed and affected our long struggle, affected our morale at this very bleak moment. Thank you for the invitation also here to a beautiful Wales and to speak at the Plaid Cymru annual conference. My friend Reen Ebiurwath, the leader of Plaid Cymru, and Honorable Liz Savvy Roberts, Westminster leader, for giving me the honor today to be among you. I am deeply grateful to the solidarity shown by the people of Wales during this, the Palestinian people's darkest hour. The Senate was the first parliament in the UK to call for a ceasefire in Gaza as far back as early November. We remember well that it was Plaid Cymru that had put forward that ceasefire bill. And we see the many instances of popular solidarity with Palestine, from demonstrations in Cardiff and other cities, towns, and numerous other actions the people of Wales have been taking. Just today, in fact, the people of Wales here in Cardiff are putting out a symbolic red line outside the Senate. It is there to remind us, the red line, to remind us that Israel has crossed all red lines. And governments in Washington, in London, and elsewhere did absolutely nothing. The red lines we established together as a family of nations after the horrors of the Second World War, after the senseless, evil murder of tens of millions of civilians here in Europe. We stood together and we said, never again. Never again we will allow for the targeting of any people because of who they are. And for that purpose, we did come together and we built our international order to prevent such madness, such carnage, to ensure that should wars erupt, if they should erupt, there are rules for and legitimization of how they erupt under the strict premise of self-defense, and by the way, that doesn't apply on an occupier. And should these rules be violated, those who violate the rules will be held accountable. That's the international system we built. Yet, here we are 78 years later. We are witnessing, yet again, the senseless genocide against our people, because of who they are. I want to remind all of you here, because I am from Gaza, as our friend here generously introduced me, being born in a refugee camp. 60% of Gaza population are less than 16 years old. Who are they killing? Who are they targeting? And my friends, what we are witnessing, what we have been witnessing for over a year now, is a genocide. Some people deny it, some people deflect, some people dissemble, but no denial, no deflection, and no dissembling will bring back the 30 people who were killed in schools in Jabalia a few hours ago, mostly women and children. These were attacks on schools just a few hours ago, sheltering thousands of displaced people. These were 3 war crimes, openly admitted by an Israeli, because they bombarded 3 different schools, by an Israeli military convinced that it has full, absolute impunity. And the thousands who sought shelter in these schools have been displaced multiple times already and are now going to be displaced again. They join 1.9 million Palestinians in Gaza, 90% of the population who have been displaced so far, mostly to insecure shelters, tents, and who are huddled together on just a fraction, a small little fraction of Gaza's territory, which is already a very small, tiny territory. It's 360 square kilometers. What's the size of Cardiff? Maybe it will be even less than the size of the city of Cardiff. Yet, they are asked to live in a tiny place called Al Mawasi, and that tiny place is still being bombarded. They stay, yet our people in the north, because the intensity of the bombardment in the last few hours is on the north of Gaza. And just in the last few days, Israel also issued evacuation orders to every single soul in northern Gaza, where an estimated 400,000 people have tried to cling into their homes. My own family is part of that, clinging. And I am on the phone whenever I can, whenever they have connection. Many of them live in the north. Israel has issued an evacuation order to everyone, not for the first time. And by the way, this is not a military order. This is a depopulation order. Make no mistake. They have declared it publicly that they want to depopulate the entire north of Gaza. However, our people, my family, and the entire people of the north, and all over Gaza, all over Palestine indeed, decide to stay because they are determined to avoid the fate of the parents and grandparents who in 1948 were similarly turned into refugees during the Nakba events, when 2/3 of the Palestinian people were ethnically cleansed from our homes, our lands, our farms, our lives. These are the lessons a traumatized people learn. Don't leave. And it is heartbreaking that death in Gaza has become the best of options. The best of options. The easiest of options. When I speak to people, it trenches the heart, kicks you in the guts. It dents your morality and your humanity when you hear that perhaps at this point, being killed is not the worst case scenario. When I speak to a friend and she tells me that she feels so guilty that she's alive because her husband was just in the room next to her and he was killed, and that part of the building collapsed. And until now, his body is under the rubble. And by the way, he just graduated a year ago from King's University in London. He's a medical doctor who went back to Gaza to serve. He specialized in women and children. And we're just commemorating him by the name of Dr. Maysara Reyes. That was his wife, who told me and told us that at that time she didn't know if she should pray that he is dead or alive. And part of her didn't want him alive because she didn't know what part of his body is impulated. To that extent, humans have become unknowing, undeciding, to live or to die, to pray for survival. And you know the survival guilt? This is what we have come to. 42,000 people have been confirmed killed in Gaza, the vast majority women and children. I say confirmed because we don't know the numbers of those unconfirmed, like Dr. Maysara al-Rais and all those who we didn't retrieve and we didn't bury. Conservative estimates like the Lancets, the UK Lancets, puts the figure far higher at over 180,000 who have been killed in the last year. 180,000. Such estimates include all those that have been killed or died related and because of related causes, like starvation, because of Israel has imposed a famine on Gaza, as you all know, or disease, because Israel has almost completely destroyed Gaza's health sector and is preventing humanitarian aid from reaching those in need. There is barely a functioning hospital left in Gaza, my friends. There are no schools for 625,000 school children. For the second year in a row, they go without education. Every university, every single university in Gaza has been destroyed. Industry, agriculture, homes, factories, bakeries, cafes, you name it. Israel has destroyed them all. Israel has managed to destroy two-thirds of all structures in Gaza. 70% of homes, all homes, 80% of schools, 90% of hospitals, and 100% of universities. It is a genocide. And no amount of denying, of gaslighting, deflecting, or dissembling can hide this truth. And that's why, as far back as January, the International Court of Justice ruled that the crime of genocide brought about by South Africa against Israel, they said that it is plausible that Israel is committing genocide and officially put Israel on trial for the crime of crimes, extermination, annihilation of an entire people. And my friends, a few days ago, Israeli jets, because this is not just in Gaza. This is not just in Gaza. Israeli jets bombed a cafe in Tul Karim, a coffee shop in Tul Karim in the West Bank, killing 20 Palestinians. Some 750 people have been killed in the West Bank since last October. And by the way, speaking of October, everybody talks about the 7th of October. But on the 6th of October, the UN already declared that that was the deadliest year, 2023, for Palestinian children in the West Bank. If you go back to the record. And in the West Bank, thousands have been injured, thousands have been detained without trial or charge, arbitrary detention. And you've been following the torture and the murder in Israeli prisons? Have you followed the rape in Israeli prisons? Did you see, only a couple of months ago, that there was a documented case by the UN of Israeli soldiers raping a Palestinian prisoner? Actually, prisoner is not the term, a Palestinian hostage, inside their jails. And then there was some questioning of these soldiers by some military authorities. There were demonstrations by the Israeli public that they should not be questioned. And there was a discussion in the Israeli Knesset by senior members of the government and the parliament that actually raping Palestinian prisoners is legitimate. It's a legitimate tool of war. And therefore, while Gaza is receiving the most hatred and killing machine, the West Bank is not spared. Israel has now trained its sight on Lebanon, reproducing its Gaza playbook of indiscriminate and massive violence to terrorize and subjugate the civilian population. You followed what is happening in Lebanon. I mean, detonating 5,000 communication devices, pagers and what have you, without knowing where are these pagers, if children are playing with it, if it is in a supermarket or a hospital, a car or a home, is an act of terror. This is terrorism. Very well defined in international law as terrorism. Can you imagine if this applies anywhere else? Can you imagine if this applies on Israeli soldiers? Because there is 1 million Israeli soldiers. Are they legitimate targets if they are with their wives and children, if they are buying in a supermarket something? No, they're not. According to international law, they're not. Only combatants in a battlefield that poses threat to the life of soldiers. Yet, we left things to fester to this extent. Israel offers, at the same time, with all this, and this is the only playbook we have been seeing for 76 years. By the way, nothing new except the intensity of it. Israel offers no political solution, no pathway to peace, no future horizon that isn't predicated on permanent occupation, continued violence, and impunity from law. It wants to bomb its way to unchallenged supremacy for us and over every country in the region. So conference, we friend, yeah? My friends, it is not just Palestine and Lebanon either. It is not just our region. It is not just Gaza and Palestine. It's not just the Middle East. Israel is waging war on the global rules-based order. Despite the International Court of Justice, despite the UN Security Council resolution, despite the ICC, despite even the prompting of Israel's closest allies, like the US and the UK, Israel has time and time again rejected a ceasefire, rejected your call for a ceasefire as early as November. It has slandered UN agencies as terrorists. They have designated UNRWA, the biggest UN agency in Palestine and the region, as a terrorist organization. So it's not just a designation for the Palestinians. Now the United Nations is welcomed in that club. Anybody, anything that stands on their way tries to stop their atrocities. It has even declared the United Nations Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, as a persona non grata. He's not welcomed and they will not receive him, they will not give him a visa to Israel. Can you see the level of impunity? Because we have established the UN exactly to make sure that impunity doesn't exist. They are after the UN itself. In fact, only the last 24 hours, Israel has bombed UNIFIL, which is the UN peacekeeping mission in the south of Lebanon. Bombed them. To that extent. Because if you allow them to slaughter Palestinian children, they will come after your children. They will come after your institutions. It doesn't stop at our borders. And yet, my friends, yet, Israel still receives support from Western governments. It still receives arms from the US and from the UK and from the West in general. I still hear every other morning, every other evening, that Israel is our closest ally. Seriously? What do you mean closest ally? In what? Alliance in what? We have shared values with Israel. What are these values that you have? And what Israel are you talking about? Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East Are you kidding me? And I'll tell you something from my heart, because I am among friends here. If there is one thing that will be everlasting in our hearts, it would be this whole idea about liberalism, internationalism, the West lecturing us for years and decades about human rights, and how all that has collapsed. Collapsed. We need no lecturing anymore. Still, Israel is allowed to deepen and expand its illegal colonial settlement in the occupied territory. Settlements are plainly designed to make occupation permanent. It is an act of annexation. It is not time we all collectively, isn't it? Not time that we all collectively say, enough. Enough. We know where we have to go, my friends. This is the good news. It's not like we are confused. We know where we should go. And the International Court of Justice just told us 2 months ago, in the most clear language and ruling way possible. Israel's occupation, the ICJ ruled, Israel's occupation, presence in occupied Palestinian territory is unlawful. Unlawful. By the way, in international law, there are some military occupations that are lawful because they are temporary and they are governed by the Geneva Conventions. The occupier must provide for the people under occupation in terms of services and protect them, etc., until that occupation ceases. But Israel's presence is no longer an occupation. It's an annexation, it's designed to be permanent. That's why it's now declared legally by the international law and international institutions as unlawful. Also, Israel's settlements, all of its settlements, are unlawful, illegal, and must be en masse dismantled. That's the ICJ for you. And it is the obligation, the ICJ goes, of third parties like the UK not to support in any way or shape Israel's continued presence in the occupied West Bank, including Jerusalem, East Jerusalem, and the Gaza Strip, the occupied territory. And the obligation of third states, this is where you come, my friends, in. This is where exactly you come in, the responsibility of third party. This is where the Senate and Westminster and all of your acts come in. And this is where Plaid Cymru and all our friends and political parties in Wales come in. This is where the great nation of Wales come in. Your role now is to continue reminding the UK government of its own obligation under UK domestic law before international law. And these obligations are clear. There must be an immediate ceasefire that should lead to an end to Israel's presence in occupied territory in 1 year, as more than 2/3 of the UN member states agreed this last month. If Israel continues to reject the international will, and it will reject, as it has been rejecting, Israel must be compelled to comply. There are clear mechanisms for this. We are not inventing the wheel here. To compel an actor that is not keen on acting in accordance with our rules, we compel these actors. How? Number one, arms embargo. And you know, when the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu went to the Congress a few months ago, addressed the Congress, the most important sentence he delivered there, and I think he went there to deliver it, was, "Give me the tools faster," he said, "and I will finish the job faster." What are the tools in this sentence? It's the arms, the weapons, the 2,000-pound bombs, the bunker bombs, the F-16 and 35 that end up killing the thousands of children. Almost 17,000 Palestinian children were killed in the last year alone. Almost 12,000 women. And by the way, we keep focusing on children and women because they are the majority of the 42,000. But the men who are killed are also innocent. Somebody needs to speak on behalf of Gaza's men and Palestinian men. And therefore, the UK government has taken some tentative steps in this path, or on this path. But a partial arms embargo has already proven to have little effect. And you cannot half-bake this. You are either committed to international legality or you are not. There is nothing in between. There is no half pregnancy. Sorry for the expression. You are either here or you're there. Don't zigzag your way. And we're having steady conversations with the UK government about the need to enforce effective measures that includes a full arms embargo, as called recently by the French president, by the way, Emmanuel Macron. They must include sanctions. Sanctions. Sanction the illegality, sanction the illegal settlements, sanction the illegal settlers, sanction the companies that profit from the illegal settlements. And by the way, this is no longer my language or your language. This is now the requirement of international law. Every third party must sanction. It's written in the UN resolution that passed overwhelmingly. Otherwise, these countries are not only complicit in the genocide, they are partners in the genocide. Partners in the genocide. And these steps also must include and should include, as a matter of priority, accountability. Accountability. Every war criminal must be held accountable. All of them. Justice must be served to victims, all victims. And this is not just to serve justice for the victims and those who lost their lives and livelihoods, but this is an act of deterrence because we want to make sure that war criminals will think again next time. We want to make sure that this is the last time. Because guess what? Gaza, where I come from, is so resilient, so determined, so historic and ancient, so rooted, so educated. Just told you more than 60% are less than 16 years old. That's our wealth. Because they are one of the most educated in the entire region, if not the most educated in the entire region. So those are people in Gaza, in the West Bank, in Jerusalem, and everywhere else outside are capable to rebuild, to rise. But we want this to be the last time. And the best way to make sure this is the last time is accountability. And that's why we welcome the new government in the UK decision to pull out the intervention of the previous government at the ICC, the International Criminal Court, where the previous government said, the ICC is not the place for accountability. Seriously, where is the place for accountability? Where is it? 10 Downing Street? The White House? The place for accountability is the International Criminal Court. That's why the world established it. And they established it to hold all war criminals accountable, not the brown war criminals only, or the black war criminals only, or the Russian war criminals only, every war criminal. And to end this, my friends, there must be an immediate recognition of the state of Palestine. This isn't a favor. This isn't a gift. This is an inalienable right, a birthright of the Palestinian people, and it is long overdue. And every country, particularly Britain, why is it particularly Britain? Because Britain, with its history, with its involvement, has directly contributed to our Nakba, to our agony, to our suffering. And we keep telling our counterparts in the British government, if not now, when? When? The British Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, did say the sentence that this is not a gift, this is not a favor by a neighbor, this is a right. Okay. But last week he said something interesting in the parliament. He said, it's not, recognition of the state of Palestine is not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. You see, the art of delaying, the inevitable. And we tell him, if it's a matter of when, it should have been done yesterday, long time ago. You've missed many historic junctures. And that's exactly why we are where we are today. Because you did not provide people with clarity. You did not give hope to the Palestinians that you are serious about your policy. You gave lip service and statements. And as a result, the lack of clarity, you asked us to recognize Israel, which we did, but Israel never recognized us, and you never recognized us. And the translation of that was, it's a process of encroachment by Israel, of biting land, of buying time, of undermining the very prospect of a two-state solution. And my friends, I will fast forward here by saying this. I know you will be voting on a motion just after this speech by mine. And I've been told, I've been briefed about some of the decisions you are making. I just want to tell you, and decisions in line of all what I just said. Calling a spade, calling Israel the apartheid state of Israel. And I tell you, it should have the A word before its name, because it is an apartheid system. A system of supremacy, of negation, of denial, of hatred, of racism. And to bring it to an end, we have got to do what you did, and your parents did to the ANC and the South Africa and the anti-apartheid movement and the freedom of Nelson Mandela. How did the apartheid regime in South Africa collapse? It's because of your activism. Because you sucked oxygen out of the life of that racist regime. Because you encircled them, isolated them, and told them you can only exist in this world if you respect all equally. One person, one vote. And eventually that apartheid regime collapsed. And by the way, that reminds me that the people of the world and the anti-apartheid movement was so advanced, governments were not in line. Wasn't the Thatcher government here or the Reagan administration were not in line. They were supportive of the regime until late in the game when they saw the depth and the seriousness of that anti-apartheid movement. Today we witness something very, very similar. And I remember very well the Right Honorable, the leader of the party, Ron, correctly denounced the collective punishment in of Palestinians in Gaza and the unjust and humane. Your Labour colleague in the Senate, John Griffiths, in supporting the Plaid Cymru motion for a ceasefire, said, this is a moment of truth. That was already in November. History will judge us, he said. History will indeed judge us, my friends. History will judge us. But I know history will be kind to Wales, very kind, very loving to all of you and to Wales and the Welsh people who have shown great solidarity and moral clarity. Remember this, the tide is turning, my friends. The tide is absolutely turning. It's turning because of our people. This ancient nation, very well rooted, the heroism of people insisting to document, to film their own execution, so you know. So nobody can say they didn't know. The resilience, the steadfastness, the determination to keep the journey towards freedom. The insistence, the stubbornness. We must be hopeful. And look at you, and look at the millions who have protested across the world in support of Palestine. Millions upon millions. Look at the UN, the world's body, which is overwhelmingly for justice for Palestine. Look at the wave of recognitions from countries like Spain and Ireland and Norway, allies of the UK. Look at every international institution of justice. Look at the ICC and the ICJ. Look at every single significant human rights organizations, including the UK's one, the Amnesty International. Look at every freedom-loving people, you will see that the tide is turning. And remember again Nelson Mandela's long walk to freedom. Long walk to freedom. Remember this as we walk, we walk and you walk with us, the last mile. I firmly believe this is the last mile because it's hardest and darkest just before the dawn. Just before the dawn. But we will reach our destination. We can see the finish line. And I'm sure you can see the finish line. And the finish line is liberation and justice. The finish line is peace and equality. Our struggle is your struggle, and we thank you for walking with us. Thank you very much.